Good morning. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Good morning. I'll try it again. Good morning. It's so great to see you this morning at the First Unitarian Church of Salt Lake City. I'm delighted that you're here on this beautiful morning. If you're visiting with us today, you are our honored guest, and we're especially glad you're here. We invite you to stop by the welcome table right outside this door after service. Let us introduce ourselves and get to know you a little better as well. Let's start with a few announcements, as we usually do. First of all, for our members, have you turned in your pledge card yet? Just about everyone should have received it in the mail by now, and everyone can access it through our website. Just a reminder, we are asking everyone to have these turned in by March 6th. That gives us a little time to calculate the numbers so that we can celebrate on Celebration Sunday on March 20th. So, hey, whoa, there I am. So if you haven't taken care of it yet, would you do that today after worship? Make sure it gets done today. We're really grateful, and on behalf of the stewardship team, I thank you. Now, can I tell you all a little secret? One of the best things happening in our church right now is Teams Night. It's the fourth Tuesday of every month. You can mark it on your calendar. We're all going to be there. And the energy is so amazing. It's a great way to get involved, meet new people, feel like you're part of things. We had Teams Night this past week, and there were so many wonderful ideas and people really taking part in the work of their church. Now, another thing that happens at Teams Night is that we get to talking about problems that we need to solve. So our hospitality team has been talking about a problem for the past few Teams Night, and they've asked me to bring this problem to you. They really need some help as we return to in-person worship services. We're still checking attendance at the door each Sunday for contact tracing. We're welcoming lots of new people to the church. We just signed 13 new members this past Sunday. Right, yes. And we're planning to start serving coffee again soon. Yes, the return of our second most sacred religious practice, the sacrament of coffee. But we can't do any of these things without volunteers, especially as we open up more and more. Right now, we only have about half a dozen people helping out at the welcome table and about 15 greeters. It would be great to see those numbers double what they are right now. So if every person who feels comfortable enough to be here in person on Sunday morning would volunteer for one shift per month with hospitality, either at the door or the welcome table or in the kitchen, we'll be all set. The gold level commitment is to tell us you can do the same Sunday each month. That cuts down the scheduling work for the hospitality team. And if you need that Sunday off, we can switch you. It's no big deal. We'll teach you how to do all of this stuff. So if you can help out as a greeter or if you can help out at the welcome table or with coffee, just come see me after service. I will connect you to the right people. No great things, right? Just small things with great love. An opportunity to serve each other. Okay, so if coffee is our second most sacred religious practice, what's the first? Somebody knows, come on. What's the first most sacred religious practice as Unitarian Universalists? Music. No! Good. That's a good guess. Not what I'm thinking of. Starts with a C. Close.
Complaining.
Oh, come on now. Am I going to have to ask David? Lord have mercy, y'all. What is it, David? It's covenant. Covenant. Golly. All right, so that means that all of y'all need to sign up for the class that I'm teaching starting on March 10th, which is on the practice of covenant. Right now, we're in an interim period. We're moving toward the future. It's a great opportunity for us to learn again what covenant means and to recommit to our congregational covenant. So if you're interested in signing up for the class, it's 3 consecutive Thursday nights. You can find the link on our website or in your Torch email this coming Friday, or you can just shoot me an email and I'll send you the link to sign up. Thank you to Jessica Bieber French today. She's presenting a message from the pulpit as part of our lay ministry program. Can't wait to hear what you have to say today. And now let us light our chalice with an excerpt from a poem by the British poet W.H. Auden. He composed this poem in response to Germany's invasion of Poland, September 1st, 1939. All I have is a voice to undo the folded lie, the romantic lie in the brain of the sensual man on the street, and the lie of authority whose buildings grope the sky. There is no such thing as the state, and no one exists alone. Hunger allows no choice to the citizen or the police. We must love one another or die. Defenseless under the night, our world in stupor lies, yet dotted everywhere, ironic points of light flash out wherever the just exchange their messages. May I, composed like them of eros and of dust, beleaguered by the same negation and despair, show an affirming flame.
When I am frightened, will you There. Amanda Gorman recites a mantra before every performance. I am the daughter of Black writers. We're descended from freedom fighters who broke their chains and they changed the world. They call me. That young woman knows what she is here to do. I've struggled to know why I'm here on this planet, what my purpose is, who I am called to be. I'm descended from Jewish immigrants who, on one side of the family, fled pogroms in Russia. On the other side of the family, I had a grandmother who was a suffragette and French teacher whose gender thwarted her ambition to practice law. The family theory about the name Briefer is that one of my ancestors was literate, perhaps a rabbi, reading and writing for the community. For my parents and grandparents, assimilation and achievement were central to their sense of security. I grew up in a home where intelligence and academic achievement were prized and where their absence was cause for deep concern. Throughout my childhood and well into my adult life, I internalized, reinterpreted, and magnified these values, feeling pressure to excel, outdo, accomplish, perform. I had to be at the top of the heap, extraordinary. Today, I think the implied command to do something important with my life got confused, interpreted through the prism of my ego, which needed to measure up to an image, the external trappings of success. But the core was still missing. What did I need to be successful at? For what purpose? It's hard to climb a ladder when it has nothing to lean on. Gorman's calling came from her forebears. That didn't work for me. I got the message to climb, but had no idea where to. Other people derived their purpose from God, but that didn't work for me either. Imagining God as a larger-than-life, mercurial old man in the sky who communicated with humans in a booming voice underscored by lightning or a burning bush or other dramatic special effects, I vigorously claimed atheism as my creed. For decades, I persisted in my denial of divinity. I had never had a burning bush experience, and the whole business just seemed so implausible. In my literal way, I equated miracles with magic and God as the magician, and viewed the whole concept of the divine in a category opposite science, nature, and common sense. I was quite young when I concluded that God was just a silly idea and nothing was sacred. Not surprisingly, I received no insight about my purpose from an old man in the heavens. An eating disorder led me to rethink the whole God idea. After failing at dieting, therapy, self-hypnosis, and Weight Watchers, I joined a 12-step program and was chagrined to learn that it was a spiritual program. It didn't promote any particular idea of God, but other members who had found freedom from the obsession with food told me that the belief in and reliance upon a power greater than themselves was what had done the trick. It seemed crazy to me, but I made little progress while resisting, and I didn't have any better ideas. In time, I capitulated. I grudgingly admitted that maybe what I thought I knew about God was wrong, and maybe there was more to it that I just didn't understand. That smidgen of open-mindedness has grown and continues to blossom into an entirely new awareness of the divine. I have no greater understanding of it than I ever did, but just as I feel perfectly at ease driving a car without having the least understanding or interest in its mechanics, today I can fully accept that there is something that pulses through me, through you, through all things, that animates the stardust of which we're all composed. With this developing spiritual awareness came a shift in my understanding of my purpose and place in the universe. It's not a job, a cause, a title, or a status, and it doesn't require me to be perfect or even better than anyone else. Today, I see myself as a small but essential strand in the interconnected web, a tile in the mosaic. I don't need to stand out to have value, but I do need to show up to be the best me I can be, to continue to learn and grow and evolve, to gratefully receive the abundance offered me, and to pass along that abundance as best I can. All that I depend on for life, the air I breathe, the water I drink, the food I eat, comes to me unearned and with no effort. The deep satisfaction of friendship, love, community, these gifts sustain me. The blessings of creativity and beauty in nature, music, literature, theater inspire me. These gifts, and they are gifts, not earned or deserved, are freely available to me. And as I am nourished by them, in turn, I need to share my gifts of time, money, love, friendship, hope, insight, in nurturing the rest of this interconnected web. Even my kitchen waste, composted, helps the garden grow. Today, I recognize my place in the circle of life as a conduit of generative energy. My calling is not as pithy as Gorman's mantra, but her superpower is poetry. I don't need to be a poet to share life-giving energy. When I don't indulge my fears of looking foolish or of not being enough, when I can be fully present, that energy flows through me in song, in friendship, love, in sharing my authentic self.
We awoke on Thursday to hear the news that Russia had invaded Ukraine. A behemoth empire moving violently against a small, independent nation, set up with lies and propaganda, a naked grab for power and resources, a colonizer taking what it wanted just because it could. I never really know how I feel when I hear news of war far away. Shocked? Yes, and not really. Horrified? Yes, but in an abstract way. It can be hard to connect to the pain of a people you don't know in a place you've never been to. We need a word that describes the way we feel when we can feel the plates of history shifting underneath our feet and we don't yet know where they will land. We need a word that describes how we feel when we hear that human beings somewhere are being grieved, and it has nothing to do with us, yet we feel deep down that it does, somehow. We need a word that describes the feeling that freedom is being diminished, that this lost freedom of this people is freedom lost to all humanity. We also need a word to describe the helplessness we feel, that we can do nothing to change what is happening. It is this helplessness which brings us to prayer. We find ourselves in prayer when we don't know what to do, when we feel the awe of being small in a big, ferocious world in which so much is out of our control. If prayer will move us to reach out to a neighbor whose family is in Ukraine and offer an hour of our time just to listen, then our prayer is effective. if prayer will move us to donate to aid organizations in Ukraine who can help get food and medical care to those who need it, then prayer is beneficial. If Ukrainians defending themselves can feel that the whole world is behind them in prayer, then we are powerful in our prayer. If praying for Ukraine today will move us to speak out when our own government is the bully, when the freedoms of our American neighbors are being curtailed, then prayer is absolutely worth it. Will you join me in prayer? Mother Spirit, known in Ukraine as Berehinia and by many other names, who drapes protection over all those who are fearful and in danger, may all in your country be wrapped in your protection now. Encourage them, put courage in them, that they may withstand the attacks on their democracy, on their homes, on their lives. Hear us as we name those we know who are in Ukraine or heading there soon, our family members, service people, our friends and colleagues, acquaintances. I invite you now, if you know someone who is there or who is affected, to say their names aloud. Kuzma, Carla, Jessica. We also pray especially for Jewish people in Ukraine and for journalists and for all others who are or have historically been targeted. Mother, be with them all and be with us as we worry about them. Put courage in us too, that we may find our outrage on behalf of any human sibling whose rights are threatened. Move us to take action. Forbid us from acquiescing to hopelessness and helplessness. Remind us that we can always, always do something. Light a fire for freedom in Ukraine that can never be put out. Blessed be. Amen.
Now is the time for our offertory. But before we get there, I just want to just plug again the pledge and partly because there is a contest that is going on. Who doesn't love a contest, right? So we've moved everything up and collapsed the time a little bit. So we're trying to get the pledge cards back by March 6th, so we know what we're dealing with in terms of a budget, and then to give you enough time to talk about what it is we want to budget for. So as an incentive to get your pledge card in, we have this contest, which is 3 people will receive one of my favorite books. So there's 3 books out there, and 3 people will get to pick which one. So you have to get your card in. The Gandhis are already in the running, right? So we will randomly pick 3 people, and then you can decide which one of the books you want. So get right in. Now, the offertory is different than the pledge, right? The pledge really is the money that we bring in to make the place work. The offertory is a ritual. It's a ritual. And, we take in not an insignificant amount of money on the offertory, but what it is it's a ritual of generosity. How do we incorporate something that allows you to experience the act of generosity? So in the Buddhist tradition, they call this dana, right? And dana just means generosity. And they have that as an aspect of spiritual development in Buddhism, because when we're participating in the act of being generous, something opens within us. So when we pass the plate, perhaps there's this understanding of, what I'm actually doing, like whether it's $1 or $5, whatever it is, actually it is the act of opening. It is the act of generosity. It is the cultivation through a ritual of becoming a generous person. That's really what this is about. And I sprung it on them last time, but this time I'm going to give you guys a heads up. So, see if they can catch me with a camera. So I used to have this therapist, and we would do this act, and I'm going to use Nikki again because she's a therapist. And at the end of every session, could you stand up? I would take my money, and I would give it to him like this. And then he would accept it, and we'd look at each other, and then we'd part ways. And it was, now I pay my therapist with Venmo, which is not at all the same. And there was just something so beautiful about that giving, right? Because there was an exchange. It was not just of time, it was of this relationship that was happening between us, right? And I loved it. I miss it to this day. And so perhaps when the plate comes by, you just put it in. Just as it's an act of opening, an act of generosity. Thanks so much. The offertory will now be collected. Following the service last Sunday, a few people stayed behind in the sanctuary to talk about some of the ideas I presented in the sermon. I'd asserted that American religious culture needed to be redeemed, Because, as it presently exists, our religious culture is not capable, in my opinion, of bringing about the spiritual transformation our world needs, because it is so focused on personal salvation or resolving individual anxieties. That is, it is still enmeshed in a delusion that allows us to bracket what is sacred from what is profane, what is material and what is divine, what is me and what is other. It's baked right into a lot of our religious dialogue. And part of the reason American religious culture looks this way is because the spiritual disciplines we practice actually rehearse this dualism. In our meditations, our prayers, our devotions, and even in our activisms, we often rehearse a spiritual experience that prioritizes the individual over the communal. And my suggestion went something like, if you want to experience a greater sense of belonging, if you want to encounter the spiritual reality of interconnection, then our spiritual practices need to rehearse that interconnection as well. That is, we aspire to the belief that the spiritual progress of humanity is also interwoven, and it is impossible for me to achieve spiritual depth on my own. My spiritual life is interwoven with yours, dependent on yours even. And if I am interested in cultivating spiritual depth, then I must commit to helping others experience spiritual depth. Now, that alone, as an idea, is mildly unattractive. I don't want to be dependent on others for my spiritual journey. At least at a minimum, right? It feels uncomfortable because the idea is new. But there's another snag as well. Right? The people who stayed after the service last week came up to me and said, and I'm paraphrasing, "What are we supposed to do about the people who call us names? Who represent the very opposite of our political and moral values, who at times even commit violence against us? Are we supposed to invest in their spiritual lives too? How is it possible to invest in the spiritual transformation of people who don't even want to talk with you?" And it's an excellent question. And there's an easy answer and there's a hard answer. And I'll start with the easy answer, but then I'll spend more time of our time today talking about the hard answer. The easy answer is that I am not asking you to rehearse our spiritual interwovenness with those people today. In fact, don't try it. To jump right into the hardest relationship doesn't make any sense. It's better to begin rehearsing with the people sitting right next to you. Explore what it would be like to invest in the spiritual lives of the members of this community first. Eschewing the desire for personal improvement or depth in favor of collective wisdom and insight is a new experience for many people. Rehearse with the people who want to rehearse with you. It makes no sense to go to the gym and try to bench press 200 pounds if you don't go to the gym that much. Right? Just like it doesn't make any sense to invest in the spiritual lives of people who don't like you if you haven't spent that much time investing in the spiritual lives of the people who love you. So let's just start where it makes sense. And here's where we get to the hard answer. The people who don't like you, or even hate you, and maybe you don't like them, are still woven into every bit of your being. They are God just as much as you are God. And we are called to fall in love with all of creation, not just the parts that we like. The idea that we are separate is a delusion of the ego. On the individual level, we do not hold the same values or believe in the same behaviors, but we all come from the same source, and we all share the same destiny. So at some point, our practice, our rehearsal of the spiritual experience will need to cultivate a sense of limitless inclusion, not just the parts that we deem valuable. And regardless of what some people say, falling in love with God is not easy. I think this is why the story of Cupid and Psyche has remained relevant for nearly 3,000 years. Now, if you were like me, when I was growing up, I would see, typically in like cartoons and stuff, I would see images or imagery of Cupid pulling back his bow with the target of his arrow, unaware of what was about to strike. And that arrow, as I remember it anyway, had this magical power that caused whomever to fall in love. Right? But that's not actually how the story goes. The story of Cupid and Psyche, the one that has been with us for millennia, comes from a novel written by Apuleius in the 2nd century called The Metamorphosis, or The Golden Ass. But artistic renderings of these two lovers date from at least 6 centuries earlier, when Cupid was called Eros by the Greeks. Cupid is his Latin name. Eros and Cupid translate to mean love. Psyche means soul, or sometimes it's translated as the breath of life. The myth, then, is the telling of the union between the love of God and the soul, the all-encompassing divine and the individual expression of it. And it is not an easy union. Psyche was the youngest daughter of a king and queen, and despite being mortal, she was so beautiful that people in the kingdom began to worship her instead of Venus, who grew jealous and sent Cupid to deal with her. Cupid, however, fell in love, and on the winds of Zephyr carried her away to a mansion where they made love at night in the darkness. Cupid arrived late and departed early each morning before dawn, always keeping his face concealed from his lover. The god of love, or love itself, had fallen in love with a beautiful woman, but was unable to live with her in the light. And Psyche was unable to truly love Cupid in the dark. She needed to see who her lover was. So one night, disobeying Cupid's commands to never look at him, she drew an oil lamp near, and when she saw how beautiful he was, she became startled and pricked herself on one of his nearby arrows, dropping the hot oil on him. In shock and anger, he flees, leaving her bereft. She begins to wander, seeking succor in a number of different places before she finally realizes she must bow before her rival Venus, who then enslaves her and has 2 handmaidens named Worry and Sadness whip and torture her. Meanwhile, Cupid is sequestered in his mother's house, trying to recover from his wounds, which never quite heal and leave him with a scar. At this point in the story, it feels like the union between God and the soul is, unpleasant. The darkness, the wounding, the rejection, the enslavement, the worry, the sadness. And then Venus puts Psyche through a series of tests that would have been impossible if so many others had not come to her aid. But they did. From the animals to the gods, they all saw the desire that Cupid, love, and Psyche, soul, had for one another, and conspired to bring them together. In the end, Cupid heals and appeals to Jupiter for help, who blesses their union and gives Psyche ambrosia, which grants her immortality and allows her to join the pantheon of gods. The love of God, it would seem, is not without its trials, its sufferings, its loneliness, its tortures. And perhaps this is not an uncommon theme, but the myth also suggests that God suffers and struggles with the desire not to be seen and to be seen at the same time. In a cultural context where the monotheistic God is understood as omniscient, all-knowing, omnipresent, everywhere, omnipotent, all-powerful, how refreshing to experience God as stumbling through the relationship with us, experiencing frustrations and hurts, but ultimately willing to go to great lengths to be with us. In the monotheistic tradition, the conversation about the desire for God and God's desire for us is confusing and complicated. The omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent God has no real use for us other than something to care for or to perpetually rescue from our habit of getting into trouble. It is the affection a father feels for a child, but not the desire lovers have for one another. For many people in our culture, the concept of sacred desire, the love affair between God and us, sounds so bizarre, it feels inappropriate to even talk about it. The father imagery is so dominant, it prohibits many from embracing God as lover. And then there is the spiritual harm that has left so many feeling unworthy of being desired. It is so much safer to think of God as Father, who could never hate his children, regardless of how many times we mess up, than to experience God as a relationship that we have to nurture the way we might nurture a relationship with someone we're attracted to. We have all been turned over to the handmaidens of Venus at some point in our lives. We have all been whipped by worry and sadness, while our sacred lover lay hidden in an upstairs room wounded. The story has lasted for thousands of years, sometimes lost for generations, only to be revived because the truth of the myth shines through regardless of the culture that dominates at the time. The image I grew up with, the cherub with the bow and arrow, removed God from the realm of sexuality, exiling desire as an impish whim of a child. In the myth, Cupid is a trickster, but definitely adult. And we humans, at least our souls, psyche, well, we have a power of our own, a beauty so captivating, so delightful, that Cupid disobeyed his mother, risking punishment in order to be with us. Perhaps this too should become part of our spiritual reflection. There is something incredibly beautiful about your soul. Something that draws others in, that draws God to us, to you. What is it? What is it that God desires in you? I think it's not enough for us to try to be good or to try to let go of whatever the spiritual guides and leaders tell us to do. I think there needs to be some seduction as well. I think it's important to show God that we're interested in being desired, just as we might put on a good perfume or a shirt that goes with our eyes. We should offer up the parts of ourselves that draw God, the God of our desire, to us. Prayer doesn't have to be denial. It can be sweet, like honey. What does psyche, what does your soul have to cause love to fall in love? Find this and you won't have to chase God. God will chase you. Wrestling with the idea of not only of desiring God, of desiring the beloved, but of being desired proves more difficult than many of us might imagine, given the ubiquitous phrase God loves you. It's remarkable how few people truly feel desired by God. There are too many people in this world mouthing the words, God is love, but just feel empty inside. There are too many people in the world bowing their heads towards a creator that stands over them, not realizing that God is a supple lover who wants to do nothing more than run fingers through your hair. And this presents a larger problem, because it is so difficult to feel the love of another, to feel love for another, when you don't feel the love within. And I don't mean that self-love that has become so popular in our culture, when we try to convince our ego that we're good enough, or we're smart enough, or we're worthy of being loved. I mean that profound sense of peace that flows through our being when we come to see the beloved calling out to us saying, I am here, I am here, I am here, and I love you, I want you, I desire you. In the sweetness of the peach, we taste the beloved saying, I love you. In the soaring opera, we hear the beloved singing, I love you. In the smile, not so much the smile today. In the twinkling eyes of the person sitting next to you, we see the beloved saying, I love you. In the twinkling eyes. The whole universe is in love with you. It is calling out in sensuous desire. And when we finally hear this, when we feel this, when we see this, our lives become a prayer and a song of praise, because we turn right back around and sing the only response that actually makes sense when someone so precious to us says, I love you, I desire you, I want you. We say, I love you too. I love you too. It's here that we understand Kabir when he writes, God is in me and God is in you, as life is hidden in every seed. Put false pride away and seek God within. When I sit in the heart of God's world, 1,000,000 suns blaze with light. A burning blue sea spreads across the sky. Life's turmoil falls quiet. All the stains of suffering wash away. Listen to the unstruck bells and drums. Love is here. Plunge into its rapture. Rains pour down without water. Rivers are streams of light. How could I express how blessed I feel to revel in such vast ecstasy in my own body? This is the music of soul and soul meeting, of the forgetting of all grief. This is the music that transcends all coming and going. The music of soul and soul meeting. Not the penitent sinner kneeling before the angry father. Not the lonely child of the distant and unknown cosmic parent. But the lover's embrace of soul and soul meeting. In his poem, Our True Heritage, Thich Nhat Hanh writes, the cosmos is filled with precious gems. I want to offer a handful of them to you this morning. Each moment you are alive is a gem, shining through and containing earth and sky, water and clouds. It needs you to breathe gently for the miracles to be displayed. Suddenly, you hear the birds singing, the pines chanting. You see the flowers blooming, the blue sky, the white clouds, the smile and the marvelous look of your beloved. You, the richest person on earth, who has been going around begging for a living. Stop being the destitute child. Come back and claim your heritage. We should enjoy our happiness and offer it to everyone. Cherish this very moment. Let go of the streams of distress and embrace life fully in your arms. We are not beggars asking for mercy. We are not vile creatures in the eyes of the one we desire most. Could there be a more erroneous and ultimately damaging vision to profess from the pulpits of the world? These ministers and priests have committed a crime against us. They are liars. They are liars. Perhaps there are aspects of your life that are only now coming out of the shadow, that are only now being revealed to you. But the beloved has always known you and loves you regardless, desires you regardless of what you might find shameful. We have pretended to be the destitute child, chanting, "Woe is me, who could love me, who could desire me?" But the answer is so simple. All of creation desires you. It sings in every moment. Most of the time, we're just not listening. We are too busy. Or we avoid listening because we imagine we won't get what we need, or we project onto God some thoughts that we don't want to hear. But if we take the time, if we give ourselves to the practice of loving, the only thing that we will find is the music of soul and soul meeting. One final poem, or part of a poem anyway, written by perhaps the greatest lover of God, Rumi. He says, and it sort of struck me as I was reading over this morning, just thinking about Ukraine. The whole world could be choked with thorns. The whole world could be choked with thorns. A lover's heart will stay a rose garden. The wheel of heaven could wind to a halt. The world of lovers will go on turning. Even if every being grew sad, a lover's soul will stay fresh, vibrant, light. Mount the stallion of love and do not fear the path. Love's stallion knows the way exactly. With one leap, love's horse will carry you home, however littered with obstacles the way may be. Lovers of love. This is the hard answer. We are not condemned to being condemned. Banish the thought that we will be hated forever. Banish the thought that those who hate us today are incapable of changing, incapable of loving us, incapable of loving all of life. This is a fetish that we hold because on some level it allows us to say that we are not interwoven with those who reject us. The easy answer is that we begin our rehearsals with falling in love with the twinkling eyes of the person sitting next to us because they want to fall in love with us too. But the hard answer is that the future of the species, and perhaps more importantly, all of the other species who are now forced to live beneath our dominion, depend on us falling deeply in love with the divine. For the future generations, we seek out that which actually loves us so we might join soul to soul. But the adoration goes both ways. Just as we lay flowers on the altar, flowers are laid on our altar as well. Just as we light the chalice, a chalice is lit within us as well. We adore this mutilated world. And we praise the beloved. Put away the begging bowl. It's not appropriate. Instead, mount love's stallion. This is the stallion we ride. This is the stallion that will carry us home. You are the richest person in the world because you are desired. The love of the divine is not without its trials, its sufferings, its lonelinesses, its heartbreaks, but we rehearse so that we might hear the birds singing and the pines chanting and see the flowers blooming and know that there is only one interwoven experience, and you are a precious gem at the center. You are part of this heartbreaking and blessed rose garden. Amen. Source of life, God, my darling, inspire us to sing our way out of this loving community of twinkling eyes, of the people who want to fall in love with us. As we go out into the world that is so filled with heartbreak, filled with people being whipped with worry and sadness. And let us just witness to their worth and their dignity, not anything they earned, just because they are. Awaken us to the interwoven reality, a place beyond name and barrier and fence, beyond birth and death. The great, never-ending flow. And fill us with grace so we might put down the concerns we have, the begging bowl, the idea that we are not enough, and allow us to embrace the truth of who we are, the beloved. hope you felt the beloved in that. Truly. Thank you for coming today. Thank you to Joe and Don up there for keeping us going and connecting us to the outside world. Hello to the people in Moab. We love you. Right? We had someone join the congregation. They live in Moab, I just love that idea. Thank you to Pauline and Nikki and David and Jessica. Thank you so much for making this worship, and to Monica. Thank you to that wee little baby up there. What's the baby's name? Matilda. Thank you. Please know that you are always welcome. We love having babies in the service. And thank you to each of your twinkling eyes coming up at me. It really, I'm just here. I'm here to fall in love with you. I hope that you feel that coming back from me. Services.